Babes in Spyland. How now, sad cow? Episode 7. Bunny Nose! Amphibian Queen ran to the nearest stairs. Bunny Nose could swim, but not if she was unconscious. That's the deep freeze milk, T-Ruffle cried. And you got blood everywhere! Everywhere was an exaggeration. Spike had appeared behind the intruder after he'd tossed the ball. And now Spike held the man with his face pressed against the metal walkway, one arm in a lock, and his knee on the guy's back. If he did so much as twitch, he'd dislocate his shoulder. The gun to the base of the man's skull was a nice touch. Long before Amphibian Queen got to Bunny Nose, CB appeared on a catwalk above the vat with Spike's original grappling hook line in his hand, knotted into a lasso. A lasso? She looked again, and mentally nodded as he brought the rope over his head and spun it. He studied the opalescent surface of the liquid in the vat. It heaved back and forth, but after a moment his eyes narrowed and he launched the lasso. Amphibian Queen stopped and leaned over the railing so far that a light breeze could have whisked her off. Somehow the rope landed on the surface. Bunny Nose's hand appeared, and CB yanked back hard. The loop snugged up. He pulled, and Bunny Nose's arm emerged. Her other hand reached out to grasp the rope, and then her head breached. An explosive breath of air flew from her lungs, and she immediately began to cough. Here. CB dropped the end of the rope to one of Spike's men. Pull her out and let her down slowly. I'll go catch her. The man nodded, looped the end of the rope around his waist, and began to tug. Amphibian Queen moved to go after him, but then remembered the intruder. Hoping CB could take care of Bunny Nose, she altered her course and went to where Spike had the man still pinned to the catwalk. The skin of the guy's cheek bubbled out between the spaces in the metal grating, and blood dripped from his injured hand. Spike nodded as she approached. Grab some zip ties. He gestured to his utility belt with his eyes. Amphibian Queen opened the indicated pocket and came out with a wide assortment, long, thick, short, and smiled as she picked what she wanted. Who is he? Spike asked, jerking the man's arms behind him so she could bind his wrists together. No idea. Amphibian Queen pulled the ties tight. Spike looked the guy over. Despite what looked like a dislocated shoulder and a mangled finger, the man's face remained stony. His blue eyes regarded Amphibian Queen with no more interest than one might look at a speck of dust. A brief search revealed another golf ball-sized chrome sphere. She shook it, expecting to hear liquid sloshing inside, but it felt empty. Why toss it into a vat of milk if it was empty? Poisoned gas? A tiny pill? Who knew? She tucked it into her pocket. The rest of the perpetrator's possessions included a cell phone with no saved numbers and no previous calls, a receipt for coffee, and a thin wallet containing a driver's license, a single credit card, about $200 in cash, and an extra clip for his weapon. Amphibian Queen read the name off the license. Steve Mister? She eyed the prisoner. Is that you? The man's expression did not change. Spike sniffed. He won't talk. Yeah, I'm getting that. Unless, Spike grinned an evil grin, you let me take things to the next level. Amphibian Queen shook her head. Maybe later. She didn't have the time or the patience to deal with suspected torture paperwork. Something the SSA didn't condone. Publicly, anyway. However tempting it might be to take a shortcut, Amphibian Queen decided to do things by the book. She drew her own phone from her pocket, noticed 6 missed calls, ignored them, and pulled up her SSA app. Placing the license in front of the camera, she took a picture and sent it off to the D-base back at headquarters. Then she took a photo of the man's face, ran his finger over the screen to get a fingerprint, and sent those off too. Spike raised an inquisitive eyebrow as he wrapped a bandage around the man's hand, obviously curious about what the device could do. And she smiled. She loved her super-secret smartphone. That will take a minute, Amphibian Queen said. T-Ruffle spoke, addressing his words to Spike. You need to call the secretary. This is a matter of national security. Amphibian Queen looked at Spike. What is he talking about? Before he could answer, her phone vibrated in her hand. Mud's code blinked on the screen. Great, the last person she wanted to talk to. She swiped it to voicemail. A few seconds later, the dreaded Imperial Shuffle began to play. That would be Mud on the emergency number, calling Bunny Nose. Below, Bunny Nose was just being lowered to the ground, CB right there to catch her. I need me one of those phones, Spike muttered. Bunny Nose collapsed onto all fours, coughing and spewing milk out her mouth and nose. CB patted her on the back. The Imperial Shuffle continued. CB looked up at Amphibian Queen. Should I answer it? On one hand, maybe Mud would be nice if CB answered, but on the other, Mud would be furious that one of them gave their phone to a stranger. Before Agent Amphibian Queen could decide what to do, Bunnynose drew her dripping phone out of her soggy pants, hit the access code, and handed it to CB, who took it and raised it to his ear. Hello? A pause. Yes, ma'am, this is Agent Bunnynose's phone. No, ma'am, she hasn't been kidnapped or captured. She just got a little beat up and then tossed into a vat of freezing milk. Another pause. CB frowned. No, ma'am, not Social's milk. Yes, Agent Amphibian Queen is here. Well, up until about a minute ago, she was mighty... Yes, ma'am. I'll tell her to call you. CB made a face as he pulled the phone away from his ear. He looked up at Amphibian Queen. She says to get things in order and call her back in 10 minutes. Bunnynose lifted her head and looked up. Even from above, Amphibian Queen could see Bunnynose shivering, her blue lips pressed into a thin line. But she gave a thumbs up, which meant she would live. Good. Amphibian Queen turned back to Spike. So, who are you guys under? His handsome face creased into a frown. Tots aren't affiliated with anyone. Officially, anyway. Amphibian Queen sighed. Since you're not official, I'm going to have to take jurisdiction. He shrugged. We make the messes. You want to clean it up? Be my guest. She chewed the inside of her lip as she thought. Unless this was a huge sequence of coincidences, someone really was out to sabotage Social's milk. But why? There were dozens of other ways to get to it. Why here at the last step? Her eyes drifted to T-Ruffle. He'd done some sort of test on the milk when they'd arrived. Maybe that's why the perpetrator waited until now to make his move. Had Bunnynose not come back here, would anyone have seen the intruder? Spike spoke. What should I do with this guy? Let's get him down from here. She nudged the man's leg with her foot. Consider it done. Spike beckoned two of his men over. They dragged the guy to his feet. Amphibian Queen was torn between wanting to kick the man and needing to make sure Bunnynose was okay. She decided it would be better if she stayed with the prisoner, so she lurked behind the intruder and his armed-to-the-teeth guard of 3. By the time they reached the floor, CB had Bunnynose sitting up. He knelt next to her, still patting her on the back. Activating the camera on her phone, Amphibian Queen clicked a shot of it and hit the button to post it to Kit. She'd have to take bets on how long CB lived after trying to baby Agent Bunnynose. But, to her surprise, Bunnynose didn't bat the guy's hand away. Interesting. CB stood, tugging Agent Bunnynose's elbow. Up you go, we need to get you drat off. Bunnynose glanced up, saw the prisoner, and got smoothly to her feet. Amphibian Queen didn't miss the fact that CB kept a hold of her elbow where the guy in zip ties couldn't see. T-Ruffle intercepted Bunnynose and CB. He stood, wringing his hands. This is horrible. Before he could go on, CB asked, Do you have someplace she can clean up? His stony stare stopped T-Ruffle from his next bout of whining. The chocolatier cleared his throat and pointed. We have a break room in the back with an emergency shower. Lead the way. To Amphibian Queen's surprise, T-Ruffle didn't argue, but quickly walked in the direction he'd indicated. Amphibian Queen followed with Spike and his men right behind. I don't need a shower, Bunnynose muttered through chattering teeth as they entered the break room. Long, cafeteria-style tables ran the distance of the space, while a fleet of refrigerators and microwaves lined the far wall. The tap of feet on linoleum and the squelching from Bunnynose's dripping clothes broke the silence. They got to the shower. Amphibian Queen opened it and pointed inside. Don't argue with me. Sometimes her partner could be difficult on principle alone. Fine, Bunnynose grumbled. The moment the door shut, CB turned and said, I've got some clothes in my truck, I'll go get 'em. Thank you, Amphibian Queen said, both grateful for his offer and glad to have a moment alone with T-Ruffle, who obviously knew more than she did. She turned on the pompous man, noticing that her eyes were level with his forehead. Sometimes being tall had its advantages. What do you mean this is a matter of national security? He swallowed hard, his eyes flickering toward Spike and the prisoner. I'm not allowed to say. Amphibian Queen took a step forward. I'm about to call my supervisor. I can assure you that she knows more about this than either of us. And maybe more than him. She jerked her head at the prisoner. But before that, I'd like to know what you know. It may help us figure out how he found you. There could be more of them. The last detail got the desired reaction. T-Ruffle glanced around the room before his eyes settled back on Agent Amphibian Queen. I can't talk with him in here. He pointed, indicating the intruder. Amphibian Queen jerked her head at Spike, who dragged the man through the door. Then she turned on T-Ruffle. Talk. I don't know much, really. Just that a few weeks ago I got a call from the Secretary of Agriculture. He informed me that he needed me to coordinate with Social Know-All for a special batch of truffles. He gave me some very specific ingredients and was most adamant about the milk. It had to be from the Cloud 9 bovine estate and be completely perfect. Amphibian Queen raised her eyebrows, an invitation for him to go on. That's all I know. That doesn't exactly tell me why it's a matter of national security. Well, the secretary also told me that the truffles would be going to high-ranking dignitaries, which meant the government would be providing security for the entire operation. He narrowed his eyes. That is why you are here, is it not? And him? The last he directed toward Spike. At that moment, CB came back in with a bundle in his arms. A second later, Bunnynose pounded on the shower door. CB handed the clothes to Amphibian Queen. These might be a little big, but they should work. Better than nothing. Their spare outfits were still in the SUV. Amphibian Queen took the bundle and moved to the door, where she knocked 3 times. Special delivery! The door opened a crack and Bunnynose stuck her arm out. Amphibian Queen handed the clothes over. No towels? Bunnynose said with a bit of her usual sarcasm. None. I'm giving this establishment a bad review. With that, Bunnynose shut the door. Amphibian Queen once again addressed T-Ruffle. How can you be making truffles for Social's party right now? Don't they need more time to set or whatever? She waved a hand in the air. T-Ruffle's high and mighty attitude returned. It's a very special process, one that only we are capable of executing. She wanted to ask more, but right then Bunnynose emerged wearing a baggy t-shirt with a football team logo on it and a pair of super short running shorts. An image of CB wearing the tiny shorts appeared in Amphibian Queen's mind, and she quickly pushed it away. He probably had nice legs, but she preferred it when the guys wore long shorts. The white pallor of Bunnynose's face almost matched the milk she'd been dumped in. Did you call Mud? Bunnynose asked in a not quite steady voice. Not yet. Amphibian Queen looked around at the crowd. Maybe we should go somewhere more private. You still look cold. CB stepped forward with a flannel shirt. Before Bunnynose could stop him, CB had the shirt around her shoulders. He tucked it closed at the neck and rubbed her arms a few times. Thanks, Bunnynose muttered under her breath. Was that a blush Amphibian Queen saw coming up her partner's neck? Or was it her normal color returning? Bunnynose promptly launched a glare at her for noticing. Let's go. Spike, who was just outside the door, promised to watch the prisoner and sweep the surrounding area. CB said goodbye, stating he had somewhere he needed to be, but Amphibian Queen was pretty sure he'd slipped his number into Bunnynose's new shirt. T-Ruffle led the agents to his office and gestured them inside, saying he was going to check on the chocolates, allowing Amphibian Queen and Bunnynose some privacy as they entered and closed the heavy wooden door behind them. A leather couch and chairs surrounded a low square table with a polished surface and metal claw legs. A long desk sat to one side, with 2 ergonomic rolling chairs positioned opposite one another. Bunnynose went straight for one of the chairs and sat, finally grimacing and holding her side. You okay? Amphibian Queen asked, eyeing Bunnynose with suspicion. I'll live. For how long? Amphibian Queen asked, raising her eyebrows. At least until the end of the day. Bunnynose moved around, gently stretching her torso. Just hit a few things on the way down that aren't happy at the moment. She absently pushed her arms through the sleeves of the flannel shirt and grabbed the edges, pulling it around herself. Call Mud. Just get it over with. Amphibian Queen sat on the couch and placed her phone on the table. Putting it on speaker, she dialed Mud's emergency number. It only rang once. Mud. Hey, Mud, Amphibian Queen said, trying to keep her voice light. What happened? Amphibian Queen swallowed. We delivered Social's milk, and then found a guy trying to sabotage it. Did you stop him? Mud asked. Yes. Amphibian Queen shot her partner a dull look. They weren't in the habit of letting the bad guys win. The man who answered Bunnynose's phone said she was injured. There was almost concern in the supervisor's voice, Strangely enough, she and Bunny Nose were like family, the typical love-hate relationship that most sisters who could share each other's clothes had. Bunny Nose shook her head. I'm fine. Mud snorted. Which means you're missing a hand? Just a few bruises. Bunny Nose rubbed her back. Will you confirm that, Amphibian Queen? She's fine, Amphibian Queen said. Nothing broken. Probably. And no bleeding. A pause. Now for the real question. Mud, what's going on? I mean, what's really going on? This T-Ruffle guy is blacker than Black Ops guys here. Social's got special services in the garden, and we had to pick up milk that someone has gone to a lot of trouble to spoil. What don't we know? Mud sighed. Social is hosting not so much a party as an international task force, gathering to discuss the appearance and coordinate the elimination of a dangerous disease that affects cows. Cow disease? That is correct. Amphibian Queen shot Bunny Nose a glance. SSA had the two of them doing security on a party about a bovine problem? Mud went on. This sickness does no outward damage to the cows, but it destroys their milk and corrupts their meat. Any cow caught with this disease is only good for grazing and leather. Our experts estimate that in some areas, especially in Europe, as much as 40% of the cows have been infected with sad cow disease. Amphibian Queen blinked. Sad cow disease? She'd heard that wrong, right? Mud huffed. That is correct. Does it make cows sad? Bunny Nose asked. She shot Amphibian Queen a look that said, and why would it matter? Yes. SCD causes depression in the cows, Mud said, as if talking about the mental stability of livestock was the most natural topic on the planet. After an unknown amount of time, they only produce bad milk. When whipped, it goes spongy, not smooth. Is there a cure? Amphibian Queen asked. That is the topic of Social's party. You told us we were doing security for a garden party, Bunny Nose said, her voice rising in anger. Need to know, Mud said in her usual haughty way. Yeah, well, I just got shot at and almost drowned in frozen milk because we didn't know the stakes on this assignment were quite so high. Bunny Nose glared daggers at the phone. Well, now that we know there is indeed a threat, consider yourselves informed. Mud paused a moment before going on. I assume the chocolates are in production? Chocolates? They were in the middle of some sort of international cow disease crisis and Supervisor Mud was worried about chocolates? Amphibian Queen shrugged. Yes. T-Ruffle said they would be to Socials on time, Bunny Nose added. Good. Those chocolates will provide us with some much-needed information. The impacts of a milk shortage, and therefore chocolate crisis, are well beyond anything the accountants can calculate. Amphibian Queen didn't like the sound of a chocolate crisis. Bunny Nose's body jerked to the right, as if she'd been hit with a small charge of electricity. Amphibian Queen frowned. Had there been something in that milk vat? Bunny Nose scowled and retrieved her phone from the shirt pocket. She swiped the screen to life, and after reading a moment, her brows furrowed. She swiped a few more times, and her eyes got wide. Mud's icy voice filled the silence. I just heard that you crashed an SUV. Amphibian Queen swallowed again. Dirt roads are treacherous. So you've been in a car crash. I have an image here to prove it. And Bunny Nose was dropped into a vat of freezing milk after getting into a fight with the intruder. Is that correct? Gritting her teeth, Amphibian Queen said, We're both fine. She sneaked a glance at Bunny Nose, who met her gaze. Holding up 2 fingers, Bunny Nose flipped the phone around. Her lips mouthed the words, We're screwed. Amphibian Queen leaned forward, the leather couch creaking beneath her legs. The photo on Bunny Nose's phone came into focus. She'd been expecting the identity of the intruder, but instead a familiar face filled the screen. The last time that Agent Amphibian Queen had seen the tiny woman had been wearing a nun's habit. Now she looked like she could be in the Social Noel fan club, complete with a snotty look on her face and enough makeup to bankrupt a small country. Mud? You are both off active duty until a medical expert clears you. I will send a backup crew to Socials, report to the nearest safe house, and wait. But, both agents protested, that's an order. The phone returned to standby screen. Silence. Amphibian Queen stared at Bunny Nose, and then back at the photo. Lady Cluck is on the guest list? Just confirmed, Bunny Nose said. Amphibian Queen shook her head. The flying nun, who apparently was no nun, had gotten away from them once. She'd almost barbecued Agent Sugarlips with a jetpack and had been involved in kidnapping Sci-5. We're definitely at level 2. You can bet this isn't good, Bunny Nose stood. Does this mean we're going to ignore Mud? Amphibian Queen asked, rising to her feet. Bunny Nose narrowed her eyes. You can try to call her back, but do you want someone else to take care of this? Amphibian Queen shook her head. Not a chance.